Attention on deck. Welcome to the Warships Podcast with your hosts, Kellord, Kami Samurai, and Vanacera.
Hello and welcome to episode 84 of the Warships Podcast. I'm your host, Kellorn, along with Kami and Vanessa. Today we're going to share our impressions of USS Worcester and USS Monaghan, two new ships we've been testing out pre-release. But before that, earlier this week, I was lucky enough to have the chance to interview Sho, aka Dojo Kame, from World of Warships Japan. He's the man in charge of all of the collaborations in Warships so far, such as Arpeggio Blue Steel, High School Fleet, and the upcoming Azure Lane. Like them or hate them, they've been a pretty big part of World of Warships so far, but let's tune in and see what Sho has to say. Today we're here with Sho from World of Warships Japan to talk a little bit about Azure Lane and the collaborations in general. So Sho, could you give us a quick rundown on kind of who you are, what your background is, what you do with Wargaming Japan, and kind of how you came to be involved with Wargaming Japan in the first place?
Hey, Kellorn. So people who will probably no one knows me, but my name is Sho. I work in the Wargaming Tokyo office, which is located in Tokyo. So I am the product manager for World of Warships in the APAC region. My main roles around here is looking around the community, working with the team here, so we can try and see what sort of events, SSC events, special packages we can put into the game. Also, one of the main roles I have would be the collaborations. So, for an example, Arpeggio Blue Steel, High School Fleet, and the latest Azure Lane that's coming up. How I got into wargaming. So basically, I've been around in the gaming industry through PC browser games, mobile apps, and then jumping from one company to another. Ended up in wargaming, with just trying to do stuff in the PC industry and online gaming, like free to play. So that's a bit about me, and that's about it.
So you said the APAC region. You guys, I'm assuming by APAC region you mean the Asia Pacific region?
Yes, that would be correct. So that's like around what you would call Asia, except for China, because that's a whole different entity. So around there, and including Australia, New Zealand, and those places. So,
for the listeners that don't know, I met Sho at the Community Contributor Summit in St. Petersburg several weeks ago. So I've actually asked this of a couple people that we've had on the show since then. Sho, I'm kind of curious about your impression of the summit, from the APAC region perspective, because the summit was run in English and Russian. And I know that a couple of the people that were invited from the APAC region didn't speak English or Russian. So was that an additional challenge? And do you feel like that those community contributors got a lot out of coming to the summit?
I think I took two Japanese players along. We had one Korean streamer, we had a Taiwanese streamer, and who else? We had Euro, and then we had Captain.
Who despite the rumors to the contrary, has actually come home.
Finally, yeah. But those bunch, but the people that I talked, the Japanese people, they were really excited to see St. Pete's because they've never been that far overseas. Regarding the summit itself, they said the question and answer section, all the questions that were questioned by the contributors were very worthwhile and stuff they wanted to know. But one of the issues was that, like we said, they can't speak English. So until next time, they said they will try and learn some English. But I think there's some talk, but maybe we can have one of these contributor summits locally, or small versions with more variety, in maybe just in APAC and things. So that could be something in the future. But overall, they were very enthusiastic, and I think it, motivated them to contribute or create more content and stream for World of Warships.
I'm just saying, hint that anytime you want to have the podcast over for the Asia Pacific Summit, no problem. We'll be there.
Yeah, same with NA. So if you guys have a summit in NA, we'll be glad to go over there and I'll interpret in Japanese and things.
I'll make sure that Radar gets that on the schedule show.
Yeah,
so.
right.
Well, let's get started on some of the questions. We've had Azure Lane that just recently was announced and is kind of an upcoming collaboration, but we also have had previous collaborations, the Arpeggio of Blue Steel and High School Fleet, which were anime-related collaborations, but Azure Lane is, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a mobile/browser game. And I guess what kind of led you to Azure Lane as the next collaboration for World of Warships after the successful anime tie-ins?
Well, actually, we're not just looking for anime. It's not that. It's we're always looking for like ship-based titles that are popular within Japan and the APAC region. And so with Arpeggio, it was just released at the time. High School Fleet, it was just after the timing that Girls and Panthers was like a huge hit and everything. So because we had contacts with Aniplex, who the publisher of High School Fleet, got in touch with them and had the collaboration with them. And with Azure Lane, numerous players in Japan asked us to conduct the collaboration. Also, me and the community staff here love the game as well. So we thought, we'd get in touch with Yosta, who are the publisher of Azure Lane in Japan. And, it seemed that Azure Lane actually liked World of Warships as well, which is why, this collaboration happened.
So without wanting to get into anything that might be under an NDA or, as business secrets and stuff, how do things like this come together for just what's the Reader's Digest version for a fan of these games? How do these collaborations happen?
Well, it's more just hey, let's collaborate with them, and then we'll knock on their door and then talk to them, and it just starts from there. Actually, I talked about this in the media conference that we have on the 21st of April. Right at the start, Azure Lane actually didn't even have a homepage, and they have a homepage, but they didn't have a company homepage. So I had to contact them through the customer support of Azure Lane, going, I'm from Wargaming and I want to collaborate with you guys. And they were like, okay, you can come to the office and we'll talk about it. That was all done through the customer support email. But usually it's really just sending an email directly and then they'll say yes or no. And then we'll go to the development team in SBB to see what sort of stuff we can do and come up with ideas of how we can collaborate.
So speaking of ideas of how to collaborate, the previous collaborations featured actual ships and ship models that could be rendered in battle. So what challenges does Azure Lane pose for integration into World of Warships?
Yeah, so actually there's not much we can do for, if there's not actual ships in the game. So we did have ideas of making ships that are in Azure Lane in World of Warships, but then that's just a ship. It's not a collaboration. So, so it is a challenge to come up with stuff when there is no actual ships in the game. So right now we've just announced camos and commanders. But, in the future, I think we can come up with better ways of trying to, maybe other things other than ship skins or something more interesting, like maybe attaching special sound effects or even changing the sound effects of artillery fire and things, or stuff that would want more be more interesting to the players.
So I'm not sure if you have kind of seen some of the player-made skins for the Arpeggio of Blue Steel and things like that. But have you guys looked at maybe those and how some of them are actually quite elaborate? One of the Arpeggio of Blue Steel ones is actually the ship in the special gun mode, and I'm blanking on what that's called right now because I'm an idiot, but we'll leave that off to the side. Is that something that you guys considered as well, something that's kind of really extreme from a ship model perspective?
The thing with changing the shape of the models and things is for a start, there's the time that it takes for the modeling of the ship itself. And also, then if the shape of the ship changes, you have the argument of where does the main artillery hit on the ship. So you have some sort of things sticking out from the side. It's like, does it hit there, or is that an invisible thing? Because all the hit areas, all the hit boxes are based on the original ships. So it has been considered in the past, but then if it makes it too different, it kind of like get more players asking more questions. So we have been looking at the other mods made by players, but we don't want to try and make it too much of an extreme sort of thing.
So when you started the Arpeggio Blue Steel collaboration, were you kind of surprised at the popularity of that first one, and then as well as the popularity of the High School Fleet one after it?
Well, actually, the reaction within Japan and APAC was expected. Both titles were popular in this region, but I was more surprised at the amount of players in the European NA region that actually accepted this. Like, I thought there'll be more backfire and more, players not being that interested. But in the end, we did get response from players that it was decent content, and they did actually grind for some of the commanders in the ships in the Arpeggio event that we had back in 2016. So, it's a bit of a surprise, but I'm just not sure how our thing is going to go. But I think we can try and come up with ways so everyone will be, not everyone, but everyone will be satisfied. And so we'll try and bring something new. So there's a bit more anticipation in regards of how our global community can take this.
So in regards to that, I do find that the collaboration content can be somewhat polarizing on the North American server, and I assume on the EU server as well. There seem to be a couple of different groups of people that predominantly play the game, and one of the big groups that play are kind of what we call the weeaboos or the weebs, and they're kind of typical otaku. What's that?
Yeah, the weeb. Yes.
And they love content like this, and then you have some of the people that are the super hardcore historical players that they care about the history and they care about the ships, and they don't want to see anything that kind of quote unquote perverts that. And then you have people that kind of like both. So what did you guys learn? We did notice that as these collaborations went on, there were ways to kind of hide the way that those looked in game, and there were ways that if you didn't want to see it, you didn't see it. So were those result of lessons learned, and was that as important on the APAC server?
No, it's more World of Warships, because we understand that it's we're trying to make everything close to historical data as possible. So all this anime content would doesn't appeal, things when it doesn't appeal, people who don't really want to see it. So, which is why we did come up with the switch in the game, so you can turn all these things off. I think we do have a lot of complaints as well from players, but we do have the switch. So I think if you don't want to see it, then maybe you can turn it off. But that's the best we can come up with.
Fair enough. And I think it has been successful. The number of complaints for the High School Fleet collaboration was noticeably lower than the Arpeggio complaints, as far as from my perspective. So I think that was successful. So there are several other ship-related intellectual properties out there, including the most famous one, who my clanmates insist that I ask when they're going to see, Can Coley in the game. That are still out there. Is there a possibility of future collaborations after Azure Lane? And is Kantai Collection something that you guys have looked at?
Well, it's kind of a difficult question, but I think the main focus right now is Azure Lane. We also do have High School Fleet, which just announced an upcoming film. They announced a film in April. I think it's coming out sometime in the future, but we have no idea when it's coming out. But I think because we have the amount of the development cycle and the resources, we can't throw in more and more collaborations, in the same time. So right now we're focusing on these two, and in the future, if there is possibilities, we would like to collaborate with other titles. But like we said earlier, even if we do collaborate with title, if they don't have any ship models, it's just going to be commanders and voices again, which we kind of want to avoid as well. So we're trying to come up with other methods that we can collaborate with titles that don't have ships, like, actual ships in them. So obviously we're not going to restrict this to anime. So we're looking at other genres as well. And whenever there's potential or a title that will be interesting to collaborate with World of Warships, we'll get in touch with them and try and see what we can do with them.
It's funny because there was a time during the beta, especially, that you literally couldn't start a match on the North American server without at least 30 poise in the chat.
Yeah, it was the same with APAC. I think it's died down a bit now. So if there is a chance, we would maybe want to collaborate with them, but it's not much I can really say about that.
Fair enough. I won't press you on it, but it is like I said, they wanted me to ask, and I think there's a lot of people out there that are curious about that. So it's cool that you were able to share a little bit of background.
Yeah, I get that question like at every on-ground event we have. We're like, oh, when are you gonna? Yeah, anyway, yeah. So.
Hey, I understand. So what's the general process for identifying and pursuing a collaboration to be put into World of Warships? Are there challenges kind of involved when discussing this? Is there like a give and take that you have to go through with the intellectual properties about things that you guys will have to turn over? Or is it pretty much just, do they want to be a part of World of Warships, yes or no?
No, it's like with us, like the Arpeggio and High School Fleet, it was more, let's try and get more people into the ship genre sort of collaboration. And so, honestly speaking, with Arpeggio and High School Fleet, there was nothing we really provided. It was just like, let's do stuff, and that's about it. But with Azure Lane, it's kind of like a cross-promote, like it's a cross-collaboration. So I think if people have read the news or things, we have like Tier 9 ships and Tier 8 ships from World of Warships, the paper ships, are characters in Azure Lane now. And we would have the characters from Azure Lane inside World of Warships. Like, some of the major challenges we have would be trying to figure out what collaboration content we can put into either game. Also, whenever we develop something, there's obviously, a timeline and the amount of stuff we can do things. So we have to decide what we're going to put into the game, what we're not going to put into the game, and trying to see what collaborations or events will be at the best timing for the game. I don't know, does that even answer the question?
It really does, because and it's kind of cool that you've confirmed that you guys are actually providing content to Azure Lane in the form of, the ships that didn't exist. So I noticed that things like Izumo are in the game, which, I think that's a really cool thing that you guys are able to cross collaborate in that way. And you guys are actually giving back to Azure Lane as well.
Yeah, so we did provided the 3D models from World of Warships. So they use those as well to actually design the characters and the mechanics and the equipment on the characters as well.
Well, we really appreciate you coming by the show. But we had one final question that was a little more generally related to the SEA server, the APAC server in general. So, can you tell us a little bit more about World of Warships in Japan and on the SEA server? What are some of the challenges unique to that region, and how popular is World of Warships among gamers in Japan?
World of Warships would be like in Japan the ship game, because there isn't really any online warship games around at the moment. Overall, it's not that majorly famous. So I was talking to my parents, and they're like, "What? You work for a game company? Like the place that makes like Pokemon?" I'm like, no, not Pokemon, enough of that. So it's not popular amongst everybody, but amongst ship games and people who play Azure Lane and things, it's well known. So that's the level that we are right now. Some of the challenges we have around this region, the main one would be language and time zone differences, because the area is so huge. There's six. I think it's the same with NA as well, but we have 6 or 7 hours time zone difference. So players are playing at different times. So there's some of the issues that we need to try and fix up around here. And I think upcoming features and updates that we have would probably fix these.
So one of the more important driving groups of the NA community is the kind of the history nerd group, the people that are really into learning about history and that like to go visit some of the museum ships that are still available to be seen in the United States. Is there a strong historical aspect to any group of players in the Japanese region, or is it more on the pure gamer side?
Yeah, we do have major historians and war, historians inside Japan as well. Because Japan has a huge, very long naval history. We also have the Yamato Museum down south of Japan still. But overall, we have a great, huge variety of players. We have people who are back in their teens because they love ships from games such as Kantai Collection and Azul Lane. And then we have the historians who are in the 40s to 50s who just looking at the game and the slow-paced aiming sort of gameplay. So there's a lot of players, and it's difficult trying to come up with stuff that satisfies everyone.
That's actually one of our challenges as well. I was told that the average age of the player on the NA server is a little over 30 years old. And so it's difficult to connect with people of all ages, because the different kind of age groups communicate across different mediums. So that's actually been one of our primary, challenges that we've had to deal with in the NA region. Luckily, as we were talking about before the show, largely English is the dominant language on the NA server. So that is something that we don't have to deal with as much. And you brought up the Yamato Museum in Kure. The next time I go to Japan, that's definitely on my list of places to go. I wanted to go last time, but I ended up not having enough time. I only had 2 days in Tokyo to spend on kind of touristy stuff. So that's definitely on my list of places that I would like to go and maybe, do a little interview while I was down there. So
yeah, Yamato Museum's pretty far though. It's I think it's a day trip down. So, but there's the Mikaso Museum in Kanagawa. So that's closer. So you can probably go there. It's
I'll tell you what, you can go with me to both places, and then we can just take a bunch of pictures and post them all over the World of Warships thing, and everything will be fine, right?
Yeah, and we can have the waifu stick as well.
Exactly. No, that it's funny you bring that up, because that was actually one of the most loved pictures that I took from the CC Summit, as me holding the waifu sticker.
So yeah, the waifu stick. Yeah, we're gonna try and come up with ways to try and use that, and maybe have a world tour of that stick somewhere, but that's something.
The funny thing is that you were hiding it under your jacket, and I asked you what it was, and you took 3 looks around before you'd show me.
Because it was actually a secret thing. Maybe it was a secret mission because I wasn't supposed to tell anyone that I took the stick to SPB. So once you took it, I was I wonder if I had to tell anyone or tell him that he's not supposed to post that. But yeah, just forget it. So that's how that happened.
The cat was out of the bag, as it were.
Yeah. So I think the other comics out, and I think because we're translating the comics right now in English, but that's an actual comic in Japan in the World of Warships in the APAC. So we were trying to reboot that, and as a starter for that, we were using the photos from St. Pete's.
That's funny. I know I've seen some of them, the fan subs around, but I don't know that I've actually seen any of the official license stuff that's been translated. But definitely we'll keep an eye out for that. Well, I really appreciate you coming by the podcast show. I mean, like I said, I really want to meet up with you the next time I head to Japan for personal reasons. So, but yeah, no, I hope that you enjoyed getting to meet everybody, especially from the NA region and the other regions in St. Petersburg as well.
Yeah, I would want to try and get this community contributor program more up and running. It's just that we don't really have any majorly English speaking people except for Euro, so we need to try and hopefully we can try and link these together, try and work between regions as well, so we can make World of Warships a better place for everyone.
No doubt there. Like I said, that was the best part of getting to the CC Summit was definitely getting to meet people that I only seen their names in chat before.
True. Yes, those people.
Yes, those people. All right, Joe. Well, that's it for us today. Thank you again.
All right, thank you, Cameron, and hopefully we'll meet in Japan or maybe NA or the next contributor summit somewhere.
For sure. So I particularly enjoyed talking to Sho regarding the challenges of the Southeast Asia APAC server, and I felt like they have some of the same problems that we do on the NA server, compounded by the language issue that Euro told us about on his first visit to the podcast. I guess, did anything stand out to you guys about the interview? And if so, what did you think?
Well, I thought it was really interesting when you brought up the Kenkoli and the Kentai collection, and the answer and response to that, especially with, well, what do we do? Do we do captains? Do we do camouflage? Because it's such a different aspect of their representation of ships manifested in, their art, in their game form or show form. So I could see the challenges there of trying to do the tie-in between the two. But yeah, I mean, poi.
Everyone knows how I feel about this. I've said it multiple times, but I do find it pretty cool that he was able to share some of the details about it. And, there is a large following of these animes, and that's purely evident just, on the NA server. I don't know, what it's like on the EU server or Russia, because, maybe we'll have an opportunity to find that out in the future. But, I know a lot of people I talk to on the NA server love anime and love these type of things. So it's pretty cool that you got to interview him and he got to give his feedback and his feelings about it. But yeah, I think it's good for the game that they have these collections, because it draws in more people and a different type of person than someone that's just here for historical quote unquote realism, which we all know this is a video game, and it's not going to be historical and to the point that people want it to be. It's still going to have a lot of game elements, which it does, like everybody's favorite, RNG and everything. So I think it's cool that he was able to discuss what he feels and how he thought about the collaborations. And, for me, I don't use any of the camos minus. I do use one Kalorn. I do use the Yamato camo.
The blue stripes?
Yes, because it looks clean and it doesn't have rust all over it. And it doesn't look like a giant pickle. So I do have that one, but I think it's a good thing. I think bringing in more people, a different group of people, and then bringing them all together, and it's for the game, it's for World of Warships, and it's good that you were able to discuss that with them.
Yeah, I am looking forward to getting to see him and meet with him the next time I go to Japan. I think that'll be really cool that we kind of made that association.
Yeah, I agree. It's good to draw additional people into the game, and ideally you want to grow the game and grow the community. And of course, I understand that kind of maybe polarizes a bit, especially with, one community or one side of the community really liking historical and the other, kind of going more to the, fantastical side of, anime and just, non-historical stuff. So I can get the divide and split there, but, there's checkmark options to where, you don't see any of that stuff if you don't want to see it. So, I mean, they've really done a good job of kind of catering or giving a little bit of something that can interest everyone.
Yeah, that's why I've kind of just backed off a little bit about it. They've done a good job, like you said, of making it so if you don't want to see it, you don't have to see it. And I think they've done that with a lot of the things. I think they do that with the space camos as well. So you get to pick and choose what you want to see. If you only want to see real camos, quote unquote, in the game, you can. If you want to see all the bright lights and beautiful colors, and it's funny too that you speak about that, because when you turn off the camos, a lot of times, like if you see a Mayoko or whatever, you're like, oh man, that guy's not wearing camo, and then you realize, oh wait, they could be just wearing an anime camo. So it's funny to see. But they've done a good job. Wargaming has done a good job of encompassing I guess, all likes in the game. And I hope they continue to do that with future collaborations. And who knows, maybe you'll see different, not just anime collaborations, but maybe you'll see other collaborations. We don't know.
Yeah, I do think that they kind of left the door open, and it was cool to kind of listen to just how simple the process was that they go through to get those collaborations in check. So we have more to talk about today than just the kind of cute anime waifus, as we've been testing Worcester and Monaghan since last week, as well as some updated versions of the USN heavy and light cruisers. Starting with the brand new, let's talk about Worcester. From an AA perspective, things don't get a whole lot better than Worcester, yet in the current meta, carrier games aren't a huge issue in random or even in ranked battles, which means we're left with her 12 6-inch main battery guns, which superficially remind everyone of Minotaur. That said, these guns can fire HE shells in addition to their short fuse AP, but you pay cash over the barrelhead for the HE shells by giving up the smokescreen of the British light cruisers. In partial compensation, you're given the ultimate Swiss Army knife set of abilities: damage control, repair party, hydro, and defensive fire, all in their own slots. That said, I've noticed that the community contributor Discord says that while some people are raving about how good Worcester is, I'm personally having a hard time finding her place. The playstyle required doesn't really fit in well with my normal Worship's instincts, and is about the only thing I can say is that she wrecks destroyers who come within her radar range with gay abandon. I guess, Kami, what have your thoughts been about the Worcester so far? Because I saw that you were able to post some pretty decent games in her.
All right, so I don't really know how to pronounce this correctly because Business told me it's Worcester, and he was born there. I've heard Worcester. I've heard Worcester. So sorry if I killed the name, but I'm just going to call it an awesome ship. How's that? I like this ship. Yeah, you've covered the technical aspects of it pretty well. You don't have smoke, but I will tell you that this ship, if you get into a position where you can get behind an island or get into a position where you can close with the destroyer, I honestly feel bad for that destroyer because there is no escaping this ship. And especially I would recommend this, and I don't recommend this on a lot of ships, but the IFHE on this ship is just disgusting with its reload and just the ability. And you will actually light a lot of fires just with IFHE on the ship because of the pure volume of shells. The AA on this ship is great. The detectability on this ship is great. I believe it's correct me if I'm wrong.
9.5.
Yeah. So if you're detected and you haven't been firing and you get detected, it's a destroyer, or it actually could be a Minotaur. But either way, you're happy to do that because you just pop that radar. If you're using the radar mod, that's almost a minute of radar. So good luck to that ship, if they get caught out that way. But I found a lot of I'll say this: if you're a good Des Moines player and know how to use the Des Moines advantages of the high arcs and island play, this is a ship for you. This ship is got to be very careful though, because it does take a lot of damage from AP. I've been hitting it pretty hard a couple times. I haven't been dev struck in it, but have been hit a few times pretty hard. But the amount of fire you can put down range is just it's mind boggling to think that a ship like this could do that. But I would just say it's a work in progress because like Kaloran said, there's a lot of discussion about the ship. There's people that think it's fine. There's people that think it's overpowered. So it's going to be interesting to see where they find a middle ground on the ship. Is it potentially a reload, nerf? Is it going to be a range? There's a lot of things going right for this ship that I don't know what they could do to make it a little less good. But I personally think it's fine where it is because you actually give up a lot to shoot. Battleships are going to pick on you if they can aim. You don't have any smoke to protect you, but your utility is awesome. I don't think there's another ship in the game that has 5 consumable slots. I could be wrong on that, but
there isn't. That's the only one.
But your ability to just with all the utility of this ship, it's a great ship, and I would be really surprised. There's going to be a lot of when it comes out, if it stays the way it is. I foresee a lot of salt from this ship.
Yeah, it definitely has the potential to be very salty. I haven't had outstanding results in the ship. It is difficult to play. It does bring incredible utility, and I kind of wanted to beat you to it, Kami, and say CV Dead class for you. I did come across a couple carriers, and I mean, it's like Des Moines. It just planes disappear if they get near you. But I did notice, though, when dealing with Midway, that if I didn't have my defensive fire on, it could still, come right at me. And I remember I had 2 dive bomber groups and took well over like almost 90% of my health in one drop. And it's like, yeah, it's still a light cruiser. And, those dive bombers, AP dive bombers definitely hurt. And ultimately, this is a radar Minotaur without torpedoes, and you have HE. So for those people who can make radar Minotaur work, then you're probably going to feel really fine with the ship. Other than that, it's fun to have all that utility. It is annoying, though, if you are, going out there and you are destroyer hunting. If a destroyer, is at 10 or so plus kilometers, if they really start dodging, I mean, it's that shell time in that shell arc is not the easiest to hit. So you are definitely putting out a lot of fire to try and hit those ships. And, while I'm very used to that shell arc with USN destroyers, I'm generally not engaging at that range. So I'm finding, trying to do, especially like with Columbia as well, and the other, USN light cruisers that we're going to test, it's going to take, learning that gun arc and that firing range, or that optimal firing range, and learning how to hit with those guns at that range.
Well, I can say one thing about this is if you love the Atlanta and you've gotten to a point where you can hit ships at a decent distance with the Atlanta, and I know the ranges are different, but the Atlanta still has those floaty shells, you're going to like this ship. And I really think this ship is more for destroyers. I didn't spend very much time shooting at them in open water because, especially at that tier, I mean, think about the destroyers that you're trying to hit. I mean, Gearing and Yu Yang, yes, and Shima, probably a little bit easier. But I wouldn't even shoot at a cab, like, to be honest with you, at range. Good luck. But I found it to be pretty effective in ambushing destroyers. Destroyers that get themselves into a position that, there's only one way in and one way out. A perfect example would be like Hotspot, the sea cap area, or, where destroyers typically go in there and they try to get behind islands. I mean, if you can go in there and you play it correctly, you can go in there and 2 or 3 salvo most of the destroyers just because of the pure alpha, especially if you're using IFHE. But yeah, I agree with you. Range is an issue, but the good thing about it is because you fire so many shells. If you're shooting at a battleship, you will just easy to adjust because you fire just so many shells. But it's a very interesting ship in the sense of if you play it incorrectly, you will go splat. There's no doubt about it. But if played correctly, you will be a terror to pretty much any other ship in the game. Minus. I don't know. I didn't really face any Moskvas in it and very few Des Moines, but I would think a Des Moines might give you some issues. I mean, you can burn it down, but to get all of your guns, you're going to have to give it a pretty good angle. So maybe those 2 would give you issues, but broadside, of course, to any other cruiser, you're going to have issues. But it's interesting that you said, Vanessa, that you got donked by a Midway. So it kind of seems to have that same trait as the Des Moines in that sense.
Yeah,
it's got a very similar deck armor to Des Moines, and actually, I did get had a Des Moines try and come around an island on me, Kami, and he citadeled me with his first shot, but Des Moines players are usually used to getting their second shot off before the other person. I got two sets of rounds off and killed him with 9 citadels before he got a second shot salvo off, and so I was able to win. So I think it's one of those things where Des Moines players have to realize that they aren't the fastest reloading guns at tier 10 anymore, and can't come around an island on a Worcester like that, even if it doesn't have torpedoes.
Yeah, go ahead, Vanessa.
I just to kind of I also had the same reaction with Columbia. So, I was testing without defensive fire on. Like I wanted to see, what these carriers could do to these ships, even with this high AA. If you don't turn defensive fire on, like they're still going to wreck and hurt you. With the Des Moines, yeah, there was a couple of games where we were kind of trading shots. I didn't have any up close with the Des Moines, but I did have an up close with Zao. And Zao was at a really bad angle to where they could not torp me. And I just kind of came around and I took one salvo from them, and I'm like, okay, you're dead. And I just like a chain gun, just, whittled them down. And it's kind of funny when you're testing these ships and like you watch everyone kind of chat and like you're just not saying anything, because like sometimes you just don't want to tip your hand, especially if people haven't read up on these ships or see the work in progress. And so it can kind of be comical to see people's reactions when you're testing these ships. And oftentimes like their reactions are overblown or just, straight up funny or incorrect. But I took Zao down really, really quickly. And it was nice because, oftentimes when I'm that close, I just go to torpedoes and it's over. But it was nice, just kind of go in as the ship without torpedoes and kind of take down someone who does have torpedoes.
I couldn't imagine the ship with torpedoes. It already does a lot of things well. And torpedoes would I don't know. But yeah, I think I think the Worcester, however you pronounce it, we won't get on you about it. But I think it's a good ship, and I think a lot of people will find it, if it stays in its current form, will find it a lot of fun. And on the flip side, I think a lot of people will find it to be very frustrating to learn to play it. It is a ship that's going to be very difficult for some people to grasp, that you can't just go in there and just fight everything, because you will die. But if you play it right, you pick your times and your moments, I think you will really like this ship when it comes out.
I will say this, as a team play or division ship, my God, the times that I've divvied up with a Minotaur or Gearing or everyone, oh my God, the salt that was mined that match is pretty incredible. So the team aspect, I could see a lot of people bringing this out in divisions, because it is definitely a salt-inducing ship.
So one quick question for Kami, which I'm pretty sure he knows is coming, is you've often berated some ships for use in things like ranked or clan battles, Kami, or King of the Seas, for not having enough utility. Is Worcester too much utility and too thin a hull?
I don't think so. I mean, there are teams that bring Minotaurs right now, but of course they bring, I believe they bring smoke. Maybe they bring radar, but I don't know. If you play, it would be I think it's gonna be a really good ship for competitive. I don't know about clan battles, because you're gonna have to do a lot of babysitting of it, and then you start thinking about, one of its biggest utilities is it deals with planes very well, and we all know that there's none of those in clan battles. But I think teams will try it when it comes out in most competitions, yeah. But I don't know where it's going to fit in yet. It'll probably have I would say it would have a better showing in a tournament setting with a carrier than it would in a setting without a carrier. But saying that, if you can in a clan battle, you can babysit it correctly with a destroyer or something, I could see it being very dangerous. But we all know that a lot of players in clan battles, known players are good at shooting into smoke. So there's that to worry about too. So we'll have to just see when it comes out and the timeline that they bring it out, because it seems like they're doing some pretty thorough testing on them.
Agreed. We do need to move on because we don't have a ton of time this week. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the first round of changes to the USN test cruisers that were on the dev blog for the upcoming line split. To kind of reiterate those changes, Cleveland got a base range buff from 13.3 to 14.2 kilometers, which makes her up max range 15.62. Cleveland also got a reload buff from 7 to 6.5 seconds. Buffalo got a detectability nerf. Pittsburgh, aka the Baltimore at tier 8, got her 27 millimeter bow back, as well as 10-second reload instead of 13 seconds. And Salt Lake City got the historical 203 millimeter 55 Mark 14 guns, which makes their shells do a little more damage, but doesn't change the turret traverse. The very few games that I did get to play in these ships, with all the stuff going on ranked and Worcester and Monaghan, I did feel that they were more comfortable in their new configurations as opposed to the first round of testing, but I'm still concerned about the tier 8 version of Cleveland. Vanessa, you talked a little bit about playing Cleveland a minute ago in reference to Worcester. Are these USN cruisers ready for release in their current version, or do they need a little more tweaking?
Well, that is a really good question. I mean, I would love to test Seattle and some of the other light cruisers as well to kind of get a good feel for that line overall. That being said, with Columbia, Cleveland, I've been doing okay in it. And I wonder if that's just because I'm a destroyer captain and I'm kind of playing it like a really large destroyer. And I mean, when I play destroyers, I'm very much in the anti-destroyer mode anyway. Even when I play like IJN destroyers, I'm still like playing as an anti-DD. And this is just kind of an extension of that and kind of an extension of my play style. So I'm kind of playing, what can I do to more or less make the enemy's destroyer's day as horrible as possible. I have had a number of games where I may not have been able to, maybe, I don't want to say carry, but there's been a number of games where I've had to fire the guns till they melt and defend the cap, just kind of harass ships, try and set whatever fires I can and go down guns blazing. And there's been a number of games like that where I've had, heroic last stands, and I may not have generated, insane damage numbers or whatever, but I do feel like I've affected the outcome in the win, which I feel is always the most important. So for me, they've been doing okay. I don't know if it is for everyone. I know there's a lot of people out there who, if they're not doing, 200K plus damage and, getting all the caps and sinking 5 ships a game, then they've had a horrible game experience. I don't know. I mean, I'm not that type of player. So I've been having a reasonable time in these ships. I feel Columbia in Cleveland is going to be vastly different than people who religiously play that ship. So they're going to probably be in for a rude awakening. But is it completely unplayable? I don't know. Maybe we'll have to see when it gets out fully into the wild and everyone's kind of playing the ship and see, really how the community feels about it.
Let's see. So for the changes, I would say the Pensacola guns feel great. They did before, but I feel like that ship's in a pretty good spot. At 6. The Cleveland. I know the Cleveland is from my stat checking, and it could be different, but from what I know, the Cleveland is one of the most played ships, in the game. Let alone it is the most played ship on the NA server. And I have to say, I've never been a fan of the Cleveland, even the old Cleveland, Kalorn, the original Cleveland. And maybe that's, back then was because I was newer to the game and, it bugged me. But now the Cleveland at 8, I think has a big survivability problem. It has a low HP pool. And then you start thinking about how often do you get up tiered in 8s? and you start seeing, Yamatos and Montanas and all the other, and not let alone the cruisers at that tier. And I feel like the Cleveland at 8, if played, I guess, safely and correctly, you can have some impact on the game. But I don't feel like it's a ship that you can carry a game in, and I don't think it's a ship that really shines at anything at that tier. And now if you get a 8s tiered game, you should be fine. But very rarely at 8s, have I seen an 8s game. It's like a unicorn. So I would say the Columbia / Cleveland, it still needs help. And I've been an advocate for a heal on it for a while, and I think it needs it, because I don't know if its survivability is good enough for tier 8. And even at tier 8, you start thinking about the ships it's going to see just in an equal tier game. I mean, what's it going to do to stop a Bismarck or a Tirpitz from just pushing it and secondarying it down? What's it going to do to stop a North Carolina? You start thinking about all these other ships. And if you play it safely, you play it behind an island, I guess, you'll be okay. But you start getting into a fight where you need to start doing things and start maneuvering. And I don't know. I don't know if it's going to make it.
Well, you bring up 2 really good points there. One that we've kind of talked internally a lot on the testing, and that is, one, the firepower and accuracy and just deadly nature of the higher tiers is vastly different than the lower tiers. And in turn, does that necessarily mean that it's a problem with the ship or an issue with high tier gameplay in general? Because you look at the power curve and what tier 6 and tier 7 battleships can do versus what tier 10 or even tier 9 battleships can do. And it's like night and day. You go from ships that are, more or less like playing the lottery to ships that people know how to shoot with those ships and will annihilate you if you make one mistake. And is that necessarily the fault of the ship, or just that's high game tier in general? And maybe we need to look at, what can we do to maybe influence this gameplay? We already see this with the Brutzi, how it's getting a hull heal. And, that's just kind of the power creep of the game. Is this something that we want to think about? And I know many of us have been advocating for, but are we almost at the point where we need to start doing hull heals for multiple cruisers at a certain tier? And then does that then in turn power creep over to destroyers? And now destroyers will need more hull heals.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence about hull heals. I think that we kind of have too many in the game as it is. And I in some ways would be an advocate of taking it away from the tier 9 and 10 cruisers personally. But, it's one of those things that we'll have to kind of see where it all falls out. But we actually do have another ship that we need to talk about, and that's USS Monaghan, which is back for more testing after we tested it several months ago. And she has 2 configurations. First, she has an A hull, which is basically USS Farragut with 4 guns instead of 5. It does now get a defensive fire when originally it did not. But the surprise really came with the B hull, which loses 2 of its 4 guns in exchange for 40mm AA mounts, the defensive fire as well, and 9.2 kilometer Benson torps at tier 6. With both her guns on the bow, her playstyle changes drastically from what the USNDD players are familiar with, but now she is now in the fairly unique place for a destroyer. Kami, was 2 guns too high a price to pay for the long range but kind of long reload Benson torps?
I found I played the ship a couple times, and I actually got a crack in it the first game I played in it, and 2 of the kills were by the 2 guns that I had, but I don't know. The trade-off's pretty heavy when you start thinking about the gunboat aspect of the ship, and it is a USNDD, so you start thinking about being a gunboat. I typically think USNDD gunboat before torp boat, but having these torpedoes at tier 6 is a huge difference than having these torpedoes, say, on like the Benson at tier 8, where, ranges are more compacted at tier 6. So I think you can make better use of these torpedoes. And one thing that you could do is you can stealth torp in this boat, which is a huge difference than the Farragut. I kind of feel like if you start getting into a gunfight with other destroyers, you are at a significant disadvantage. Not even just 2 guns in the reload, just where they're located. Typically you like to get in running gunfights with destroyers, whether you're angling away or angling, certain angles. And I feel like with the 2 guns in the front, you have to you're limited. You can't just run away and shoot rear guns because you don't have any. The AA on it, I mean, cool, I guess. You get to defend yourself from carriers, and I don't even know. I think I shot down, in a carrier game, I think I shot down 4 planes that flew over me. But the torps are a huge selling point, and, I don't know. Playing this as a torp boat at tier 6, you start thinking about all the other tier 6 DDs, and you could become a real annoyance. But you got to remember, you only have 2 guns. So there's that.
Well, this ship kind of reminds me a lot of HMS Campbelltown. And it's definitely a unique play style, or interesting play style, to say the least. One thing we should note, and of course this is a work in progress, but you still have the option to forego the B hull and forego the AA and torpedo changes. So you kind of have the options of both if you want to play it more like a regular Farragut. That being said, with the B hull, I put a couple games into it. I had 1 carrier game, and I too got the exact same results. Now, I saved the defensive fire for when I was expecting the attack, but the Hiryu never got a chance to really attack me, and the game ended. So while I did have a frequent amount of uptime to be able to shoot at planes, and I too kind of noticed the same results. I did not shoot down many planes without defensive fire AA on. So that seemed a little odd, because if I were, say in Fletcher or Garing or Sims set up with the same captain, I know, through experience more, I would have been shooting down more planes. And I'm wondering if that's because you only have 2 dual purpose guns for AA, and your long range AA is really just those 2 guns. So you really kind of need people to orbit above you, maybe to get the maximum effect. I don't know. I'll have to test that out a bit and see if that's kind of playing more into that aspect. I do feel that once people learn that you are doing the B hull Monahan and they're a destroyer, they're probably going to, maybe either charge you or, really press the attack. I had one instance where this Fubuki came up and spotted in Monahan has a pretty decent concealment with it. So I knew the Fubuki was there. They were in the cap, charging to them, got spotted, ran down the Fubuki, spotted the Fubuki. They smoked. I held my shot because there was an Atlanta nearby, charged the smoke, laid a spread of torps in the area that I knew they were going to be retreating to, and came out. There they were. And instead of, the normal angled, bring all your guns, you only have 2. So present as narrow as a profile as possible and just shoot those 2 forward guns and gun down the Fubuki. They were kind of a terrible shot, but right as I killed him, the torpedo hit him anyway. So even if I didn't get them, the torpedoes would have. But it's definitely an odd duck, to say the least. Once people learn that you only have 2 guns, you're going to be forced into a lot of play styles. There was a Farragut that same match that I traded fire with a little bit, and then I retreated, and I didn't have any way to fire back because I had no guns back there. And that's definitely an issue, especially with destroyers, that if you can't retreat and be able to return fire. And I think the last thing that I'll bring is, for having only 2 guns, the turret traverse seems really slow, especially when you got to change directions. And I know it's a work in progress, but in my opinion, why not take the Sims a tier up, where you get, in my opinion, a lot more benefit out of it than this tier 6 destroyer.
That's also a possibility as well. But I mean, they are not adverse to moving premium ships around in the tier, as we've noted by Z39. So we'll kind of see how that ends up going. But before we sign off for the week, I wanted to touch base on our experiences from the first week of Ranked Season 9. Personally, I felt that the Tier 8 games felt pretty balanced, with good representation from all classes and even the occasional CV. I played Lo Yang to start with and found her to be a good, strong option, but found that I had better success in Tirpitz. I think part of my success was actually due to the reputation Tirpitz has among players as the Derpitz, and I found that I was often ignored as unimportant or unworthy of attention, only to rake in pretty massive damage totals. When I ascended to rank 10, I found myself mired in kind of the quote-unquote specialness that is the rank 10 to 6 bracket. Before the season started, I thought that an irrevocable rank 10 was a good idea. It separated the tier 10 gameplay from tier 8, but boy was I wrong on that score. Irrevocable rank 10 means that anyone that can play tier 8 well enough to get to the rank 10 is now stuck there. They don't ever drop down to rank 11 or 12, and the gameplay of tier 8 that got them to rank 10 doesn't necessarily work at tier 10. And just as well, they may not know their tier 10s quite as well as they know their tier 8s, or know how to play them versus other tier 10s. Lots of players, myself included, tend to bully the lower tier ships when playing a tier 10 before focusing on tier 10s at the end of a match. That is not an option here. So people who are trying desperately to get to rank 5 and into the Premier League are mired in the mud that is comprised of people stuck at rank 10 and 0 stars, people who've lost 10 games in a row but don't drop out of rank 10. Now, the counter argument that I was presented with is that making rank 10 revocable, people would alternate between tier 8 and tier 10. But I guess the question is that a strong enough argument to make rank 10 irrevocable in future seasons?
Well, seeing how ranked is going this season, and I've never been someone, there's people that they love ranked. I've never been someone that's loved ranked. I just do it because, I've done it for seasons past. And people are like, well, rank shows your true skill in the game. It's just a glorified random. And I'll tell people that every time. And it takes a lot of luck to get through ranked. I mean, you could play 10 games in one night and the other team could be stacked against you all 10 times. You just don't know. But I would say having the irrevocable at rank 10 this season has been the worst decision in ranked I've seen for a while. I would say I understand bouncing back between 8 and 10. But if you were able to get from, whether you started at whatever it is, 23 or 13 or wherever you started, depending on where you ended last season, if you're able to get from through the 8s and get to rank 10, you should be able to do it again if you drop out. So what has happened this season is it's like a safety net. It's like everyone gets to 10 that can, and then it doesn't matter how well they play or if they even have experience in those tier 10 ships, they can just stay there and cost teams games over and over because they don't have the experience or they just don't care. And I've seen that a lot this season. I've seen, maybe your only tier 10's at Khabarovsk, and I've seen plenty of those this season. So I think it was a terrible, terrible decision to put irrevocable at 10, and it's going to lead to a lot of people being more mad than they already are. And I've tried to tell people to rank out as soon as they can, because the longer you wait, the worse it's going to get, because the more people are going to get thrown into that pool of the 6 to 10 bracket. And I'm there right now. I'm at rank 6 and I'm trying to get out of it right now to get up to the Premier League. And there have been I've seen some awful play. And it's not even, we're not going to name names or anything, but I can tell you that there's a certain CV player that is not very good at the game that has allowed, basically because they want to play CV, has allowed other CVs to farm him, and it has caused a lot of angst for some people. And I'll just tell you this. if you're going to play CV, please know what you're doing and don't just be like, hey, I'm going to play CV because I can. Because there are the good CV players in ranked are more than likely going to outplay you. And just do your best to help your team. If you're not a battleship player at tier 10, play what you're best at. That's what the biggest thing of advice I'm going to give you is when you get up to rank 10 and past, play what you're best at and do what you can. Communicate in the chat. And I know it's a revelation to think people would talk on this game in chat without calling each other names, but do it. Hey, point out ships with the F3 command, shoot the same ships, focus fire, do the things that you would do in randoms. And I'm not talking just sail around and do figure eights, but actually try and play. And actually, if you're new to ranked, if you're new to tier 10s, learn from some of the people that have been playing tier 10s and have played and had success in ranked or other forms of competitive, outlets. So just do your best, but please contribute to the team.
So I did have another question for you, Kami. I have noticed that there are a real lack of destroyers in the tier 10 games. And now I've only played about 5 games at tier 10 so far because I just got ranked 10 on Tuesday. But I think that, we talked a little bit with Arun last week that we didn't think that destroyers would be as popular as they had been in previous seasons. At tier 8, I was seeing, 3 and 4 destroyer games pretty regularly, but most of the time I'm seeing 1 to 2 destroyer matches at tier 10. Do you think that's going to continue on as we get higher and higher into the Premier League bracket, or do you expect to see a few more DDs when we get to rank 5?
Well, one of the biggest things with the differences in tiers that I've noticed, at tier 8, you can save your star pretty, I wouldn't say easily, but pretty reliably, being a low yang, right? Because you're typically going to help kill the first DD. You're probably going to get some caps. But at tier 10, it's a lot different. If you notice, that contested cap typically doesn't get capped for a while if both teams are doing what they needed to do, which really eliminates what the DD is capable of because of all the radar. I mean, I've seen multiple games where there's been 3 Des Moines on one team and 2 Des Moines and a Moskva on the other team, and the Yu Yangs that I've seen have been running radar. So you start thinking about all of those things combined. It's going to make it so that DD play is very I would say boring and stressful because you got to be paying attention to everything, not just the enemy DD, but you got to be paying attention to where's that Des Moines, where's that Moskva, is this Montana that is spotted gonna 15K me. There's a lot more, I think, risk of playing a DD at tier 10 than it is at tier 8, and I think that's led to a lot of players go to battleships or cruisers because of the survivability aspect.
Well, that's the other thing is that, in previous seasons, like a tier 8, cruisers aren't nearly as survivable as they are at tier 10. I mean, the Hindenburg can stay in there for an extraordinary amount of time. The the Zhao can disappear and come back and have half its hit points back. Actually, the one that I think is, Minotaur, you can delete if it's firing from a smoke and you get a lucky shot. But I actually think the Des Moines is kind of the one that suffers the worst problem from survivability aspect, because I've been able to do a heck of a lot of damage to Des Moines from basically any angle if they show themselves at all. So only when they're completely hidden are they safe. So, but you still do see a lot of Des Moines because of how many you think, all the things that we talked about last week with Arun, because of how, the radar, the length of the radar, and, just the fire rate of the guns. So, in my Yamato, I want to see Des Moines on the enemy team because I'm going to kill them.
Well, yeah, you have Lulpen guns of death. So, I mean, of course you want to see them. It's going to be interesting. I haven't touched rank yet. And, I will get into it eventually. Part of my issue is, the times that when I play ranked, there's generally not a lot of people playing. So I kind of have to wait until the population actually kind of gets, into a good range bracket for me to actually play. Cause I'll queue up and there's no games going on. So hopefully here in another week or so, there will be a good enough population and I can kind of test the waters and see how it goes. I'm sure, the tier 8 Lo Yang gameplay is going to be just like last season. And, I am really curious, especially as a destroyer player. I've got a lot of tier 10 experience, and I'm going to see, there's going to be a proliferation of radar, and just going to have to see how that pans out. But I do a lot of the things that you were kind of talking about earlier, Kami, with, the kind of boring and stressful at the same time. And I kind of like that tactical game. I'm not always about trying to generate the highest damage number possible. I'm always kind of looking for, what do I need to do, or what can I do right now to try and help our team win? And it's going to be interesting this ranked season.
We went over our ranked predictions, with Arun. One thing I can say is I have not seen a lot of 52s. I've seen a lot of Gearings and a lot of Yu Yangs, but not very many 52s. My thought on that is because of the shorter range torpedoes, and you're having to get closer to use them.
Well, isn't that also a reflection of, if there's less destroyers overall in the match that you're seeing, why do you necessarily want to bring the Z52? Because, it's part of its luster is its ability to really kind of anti-destroyer.
Oh, an anti-destroyer. Yeah, I'd agree with you there. It's just interesting that, it's hard to ever predict the meta, because you don't know until you get there. But yeah, I would have to say my top 3 ships that I've seen a game where there were 4 Montanas on both teams. I mean, that's, when you start thinking about that. Yes. And you talk about a brawling situation. And what I've also seen a lot more this season, which has been kind of cool in a way, is I've seen a lot of teams without a DD at all. I had 3 games on Tuesday, where both teams had 4 battleships and 3 cruisers. And it was on Tears of the Desert, and we literally met right there between, B and C, and just brawled it out right there next to those islands.
You know what I'm thinking right now, right? You remember the scene from Boondock Saints with Willem Dafoe screaming, "There was a firefight"? That's what I'm thinking right now.
I mean, it was actually a lot of fun, and I can tell you it was a lot more fun than anything that I've seen at Tier 8 in a while. But then again, you start thinking about it, that comes down to which team's going to kill, the other team first, because no one's capping, unless another team sends a ship up there, but then the firepower is gone. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, the DD population has been pretty low, and I don't know what it looks like at the rank, the rank 5 bracket. But I have a feeling I don't think it's going to change all that much, because everybody wants to survive, and everybody wants to have the best chance to do big damage. And I don't know at tier 10 if being a DD is where you want to be. But if you're a good DD player, I'm not saying don't play DD, because you still can outplay the other DD, but they're going to have a lot of help, just like you should have a lot of help. So it's an interesting tier. The only thing I can say that I disagree with heavily on this season is the rank 10 irrevocable. I think that needs to go. And other than that, I think the season's been decently fun for as much salt as you can mine.
I do I am enjoying playing tier 10s and ranked. So that part of it I enjoy. I just think that, and I think that irrevocable tier rank 10 thing was made for the best of reasons with the best of intentions, just with unintended consequences. So I did want to make that clear. Speaking of the rank 5 bracket, I wanted to do a quick shout out to Dastert, because he's the first person that I've heard of that has gotten to rank 1 this season, and less than a week to do that. That was pretty impressive. I think you said 107 games, Kami?
Yeah, something like that. And yeah, congrats to Dastert. And now he can go back. Now he can go back to annoying potato quality, because he's done with his ranked season. But yeah, I mean, with your point, I think their idea of the irrevocable at 10 was done with the best of intentions, but it's turned into be a nightmare for most players.
Yeah, maybe put it at 11. Something where it's close enough to be somewhat of a safety net, but not like it is now.
Fair enough. Well, I think that's going to be it for this week. Did you guys have any quick announcements before we wrap it up?
I will be doing a giveaway stream this month. I don't have a day yet, but we'll be giving away some cool stuff. Hopefully there'll be some new ships in the port. I'm hoping a certain destroyer gets put into there at some point this month. But I'll also have my other announcement, which I think it's going to shock a lot of people that don't know. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the responses that we get from this. But
and it's going to be a change for us too.
And it'll be a change for the podcast. But I think it'll be a change. I think it's going to be a change for, I wouldn't say the best, but it'll be a good change. And it'll be, we have some good things coming. So don't be alarmed. Don't be shocked. Just know that in the future things will change.
And with that nice little thanks a lot. No, that's a little cryptic, but that was a good transition, a good way to end us out here. So if you're looking for some podcast swag, don't forget that we've started off the store on Spreadshirt.com that makes podcast branded t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, mouse pads, and other cool things. The URL is shop.spreadshirt.com/worship podcast. Click the drop-down link to get a custom code for 15% off. And that's it for this week. As always, follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/worships podcast and Twitter at worships podcast for updates between each show. We, of course, want to thank our amazing Patreon backers. If you're interested in supporting us, we would very much appreciate it, as it is our primary way of paying for our recording studio as well as our hosting and things like that. And backers do get access to special giveaways like the Permaspace Camo one and other things that we've had in the past and will have in the future. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.